So, welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
And really, the first question is just give us a bit of the history about Mitolo Family Farms.
Yep. My dad, at age 14, travelled on a boat on his own just after World War II and met his brothers over here. Started market gardening in Newton, just northeast of Adelaide. That sort of branched out into grass cutting with tractors for councils, and then trading, buying off growers and selling to the eastern state markets. And then in 72, he bought a 5-hectare property in Virginia to build a packing shed to buy off growers raw product, raw onions, and pack them and grade them and sell them into eastern state markets. From that humble beginnings, myself and my two brothers, mid-80s, joined the business. There's about 30 staff. Later in the 80s, we got into potatoes as well, so that was not our first entry into business. And late 80s, the South Australia became more prominent in the potato and onion scene. We're starting to sort of find its a mark in the national scene, and there's a big expansion in the industry. At that same time, growers decided to go upstream and build packing sheds. So we were sort of looking at what do we do. So at that time, we went into the farming side of the business. So now up to 45,000 hectares and about 30 gigalitres of water. So over 3 states, so SA, Victoria, New South Wales. And now some 850 staff.
Big employer, big business. So what about, can you give us a couple of the greatest achievements if you consider the history of the business?
Oh, in itself, the courage it took to go into farming was quite ambitious at the time. We have a farming background, but I grew up in Newton and Mr. City Slicker. And I think that's what today's about too, about business and being courageous. But the other thing that I think for us is probably a turning point in our business is in 2016 our largest competitor, it was actually larger than us in potatoes, went into administration, and taking over something that was bigger than us. Some might say it was a bit crazy, but we made it. That was probably a biggest achievement.
That must have been a huge quantum leap for you.
Well, Sue will attest to this, but we made a decision to transact in 2 weeks or something. I was just keen to make sure the deal happened quickly, and there was no erosion of the business by competitors or the administrator, but it was probably a little bit over-ambitious.
Is he impatient, Sue? So, what about summarising some of the key tips or top tips for leading a successful business, and what would they be? I'll just talk about our experience. I think, understanding where the industry is going, where your industry is going, where does your product sit, what can you do to make your product or business different, or there's no point doing the same. So we scratch our head all the time about how we're going to improve our product or create an edge over the competition, whether it's technology, branding, innovation, cost. That's just ultra important. Another thing that our ethos is make $10 and invest $9.50. So we've always invested back in the business. It's served us well. I just don't think you can grow sustainably if you don't invest back in. I'm sure there's plenty in the room that would agree with you on that. So what have you experienced and learned in the last 12 months, particularly in light of the COVID situation? You need to be nimble. agile, fast. We sort of almost treat it like a war. We put in a war room meetings, 3 or 4 times a week about how we're going to tackle the situation and how we'd respond quickly. So it's just about gathering the troops and working out your battle plans. We had to act very quickly, one, to protect staff, protect the business, and also respond to some good challenges of, for 2 or 3 weeks there were orders were 2 or 3 times normal. We just, every day the emails would come in and we'd just laugh at the orders. But, how do you capitalise on that? How do you deal with it? And so it was a good challenge to have.
Were they new or existing customers?
No, all existing, yeah.
Okay. So the demand was definitely there for potatoes?
Yeah.
Great. What about a fun fact, Frank? What can you share with us about something that we don't know that's a fun fact about Matolo?
2006, I flew to Poland to see a farmer in the middle of nowhere to watch how he processes potatoes into vodka. So,
are you mates with Angelo?
Yes. And we actually brought them back to Australia, the family, and spent some time with Tarek and made Spirit, and then GFC hit, and I said, well, let's park that one for the minute.
Is it going to come back again?
Maybe.
And maybe finally, what, you're new to the Hall of Fame and you're about to experience what that means, but in reflecting on that, what does it mean for you?
Oh, I mean, it's an amazing group of people I've joined, so I'm very honoured, and I know quite a few of them very well as well over the years. So all I can say is thank you. It's something that's it's nice that after been working for 30 or 40 years to get something like this is great. Appreciate it.
It's a pretty good club to be part of, I can
It
tell
is.
you. So, ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions that you might like to ask Frank? And be very gentle and kind if you've got one. And Frank's counting down the seconds to say no questions. Anyone got any? It's almost like an auction, isn't it? Going, gone. Could you please all put your hands together for Frank for coming up and having a chat to us?